Selectmen meeting. Our meeting is being conducted using the webinar technology. So those of you that are participating are doing so by most likely obtaining a link from the website, which is on our agenda. We will start off with citizens' comments. If you wish to make a citizen's comment, what you will need to do is raise your hand. At the bottom of the screen, you can see a little raise your hand emoji. If you click on that, then we will give you permission or bring you into the meeting so that you can make a comment. But before starting with that, I guess I would like to take a roll call vote. And I forgot to ask you this earlier today. So Cam's officially on the board, right? We just need to reorganize a position, so he should be part of the roll call vote.
Correct. He was sworn in, so he is
Okay.
signed and official.
Okay. All right. So present Robin Hunter
Present Dave Haviland.
Present Cam Hudson.
and welcome, Cam.
Thank
So
you.
now that we have confirmed that we're all selectmen and we're all at the meeting, we will begin with item 1.1 with the first item, which is citizens' comments. So again, if you'd like to make a comment, you can do so by clicking on the raise your hand emoji and we will let you into the meeting. So we will give you a few moments just in case you can't find it. What do you think? That's long enough?
Yeah, I don't see anyone raising their hands, so
No, me neither. Me neither. So this evening, our first item of business, this is very exciting. It's the start of our new season, so to speak. And hopefully we can be as effective as we were last season. I personally am very excited to have another member and not have to split everything between Dave and I. So we are very excited to have you join us this evening, Cam. And
Thank you.
so just from a practical standpoint, the way we operate here in Dover is each year we reorganize the Board of Selectmen, and the member serving the third year of his or her term assumes the chair position. And the member serving the second year will assume the clerk position, and then the first year member will assume the member position. As everybody recalls, in October of 2024, due to the resignation of the board chair at the time, as the senior member of the Board of Selectmen, I stepped in and took over as chair. I am also, unfortunately for everybody tired of listening to me, I am also the third year member. So that means based upon the precedent, if the other two members would like to nominate me, I will become the chair. So
do we need to go through that, Mike? Or
Yep.
because Robin's, oh, we do? Well, I'll nominate Robin Hunter as chairman of the board.
I'll second that.
all in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
Hi, Cam Hudson.
Okay. And then Dave, I guess I nominate Dave Havland as the clerk.
I'll second that.
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Cam Hudson.
And I'll say aye, but
Yeah, you need to vote for yourself. I voted for myself. And lastly, I'm going to nominate Cam Hudson to serve as a member.
second.
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
Hi, Cam Hudson.
I'm not sure we needed to do that, but we did it. So we do have to make another motion, and that is to nominate Cam Hudson as the member of a Board of Selectmen and as an authorized signer of payroll and expense warrants. And just to give you a little bit of background, Cam, weekly we get a package from the town accountant. That package is reviewed thoroughly. There's a process within the town, and you can spend some time with Chris and he'll go over it with you. It gets sent to us, and one of us needs to authorize and approve those warrants. It's like a 60-page packet because they have all the invoices in there. But I had a long conversation with the town accountant who assured me that there was no need to audit the package. It goes through a robust process. But I would strongly suggest that you spend some time with Chris. We'll go over that with you.
What it's neat and what I use them for is you learn what the town is spending money on. And
The schools.
yeah, well, and other things, but mostly schools. And but it is very educational as you just read through what is being paid. And then as you see things that you have questions on, you can just raise them later.
Right. But they're great, if you have a question on something, they get back to you right away with an answer. And Dave is right, it is really educational. Like the first time I saw this really large amount, I freaked out, and then I realized it was funding our share of the regional school. So you get, it's not like it's not one huge payment, and then with the community center, there's been a lot of large bills and stuff as well, but it is education. So I need a second for that.
Oh, second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
I, Cam Hudson.
So the next item on the agenda is we have the esteemed Dover Sherborne business administrator with us. And she is going to give us an overview of the intergovernmental agreement between Dover and Sherborne. And we put, just as a little bit of background, we put this in place how many years ago, Dawn? Like
2014 was the first IMA.
wow. Okay. And we put it together so that it gave Dover and Sherborne optionality as to how to pay for capital. Prior to having the IMA in place, the region used to bonds all of the capital, and then the towns would share in payment of that through the assessment. And Sherborne expressed an interest of being able to roll the bonds into the bonding that they would be doing, because they generally were doing bonding annually. And Dover at the time said, well, we may not always want to bond. We may want to pay with free cash. So this agreement gives us that flexibility. And I think it's worked out really well for both towns to independently decide what works best for them to fund capital projects at the region.
And I think it makes sense as well, because you have so much borrowing going on and the region doesn't. So it's putting that extra work in the two towns that are just lumping it in, and costs with and it takes a load off of our staff, obviously, for not having to do all of our own borrowing. So it's been, I think, beneficial for all three parties. We don't have one every year because, as you know, in several years, over the last 5 or 6 years, the region has paid for their capital completely with their excess and deficiency funds. So, for example, we did not have an IMA last year. But we typically have to have one when the project costs probably exceed like 700,000 or 800,000, and so we are at that juncture this year with the turf replacement project. And I will say the IMA is less about the project and more about the funding mechanism. And I think that the IMA then is written more in that realm, because I know my first year treasurer reviewed it. He's like, how come it doesn't say the turf project? I said, because it's really more of the mechanism of how you need to fund the amount that the regional school committee voted that needed to be assessed by the two towns. So the regional school committee voted one IMA number on March 4th, pending the bid results. So in March, at the end of March, when the bid results came in, they actually voted a second amount to be included in the IMA, and that was done on April 1st. So that's the April 1st date that's in the IMA. Last Thursday night, about this time, I was at the Sherburne Select Board meeting, and they approved Sherburne, so that's why their date says May 15th, and tonight yours will hopefully say May 22nd. I will say in a typical year, we're doing this before all of the annual meetings. So it reads a little funny because now we're doing it after all the annual meetings, but I think there was desire on Sherburne's part not to even start the process until we had the bid. And then things just started rolling. We just decided to wait until after we knew actually it was going to pass. It was a tight vote in Sherburne. I think it passed by 6 votes.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah. So and then we had to wait until last week for the election to make sure the debt exclusion also passed. So it's been a very laborious project, but we are so excited at the region, and we're actually having our kickoff meeting on Tuesday with the contractor and our project manager. So the agreement tonight is the standard agreement. Just so you know, this agreement in past years has been reviewed by Rick Manley, who's bond counsel. I believe he also does some work for the town. And so we're using the template that he has approved, and the amount that we're bringing forward that the region is requesting the towns to fund is the $1,331,500. And you can see Dover's portion of that is $714,350, and the assessment is due on July 15th.
And I think it's important to note, and I know we did this in the capital budgets project and in the presentations, that one of the things that the region did do to defray the costs to the town is use some of their excess and deficiency, so 350,000. So the total project is 1.7 million, right?
0.6.
16815.
Right. But I believe the IMA is a funding mechanism, so it only represents what we as
asking.
towns need to
Exactly.
fund. Okay.
Exactly.
But the overall project is higher than this. And I think we've been really transparent about that in all of our communications.
We have it struck me, Don, as a little bit odd because the letter outlining the excess and deficiency and the town's costs is very eloquent and very easily understood. But in this agreement, I just want to make sure we're not doing anything not perfect. The district plans to expend 1.3315 to pay costs of major equipment and building improvements. So I just want to make sure that there doesn't need to be a reference to the net cost of 1,331 or something like that, because you are spending 1.6 and this says 1.3.
Correct, but I think as we're looking at this as just a funding mechanism, and this is the amount that the region voted for the towns to be assessed. And I think the word project is more generic than the project itself, but it's really project cost. Because some years it's multiple projects that it could be, and it's so I think that we look at this as really just being the funding mechanism for the capital assessment for the towns.
Well, a suggestion in the future is to be a little bit more clear in D, because it's not what it says. Not that I don't care, but I'm trying to make sure that we are literally dotting I's and crossing T's. But the district plans to expend 1,331 is not 1,681. And that's what you're going to spend. So I don't know.
But the intergovernmental agreement doesn't really address the project itself. Again, it's the funding mechanism. It's not really talking. It's really. I mean, the project I think is used generically in here. And some years it's 100%, and some years it's not.
So maybe just going forward,
If they're shared,
if there's a share,
Right.
just say like the entire project cost is X, but this agreement covers the funding, which is Y. And then it would be very, very clear. But I assume council that reviewed this, because I know we've done this before, and Dave, you do have eagle eyes here. But I think because this has been approved by everybody, so to
Yeah,
go back
I'm
and
not
change-
about
All right,
trying to
Oh,
reinvent the wheel, but
okay,
I'm just saying that it could be clearer and what this actual agreement says and what the region is doing don't match. We all know why. You don't have to say why. I get it.
well, the letter said it.
Yeah,
Well, to set the
the
stage, right, for
document
that.
should say it.
Because I think there's other places though. You even go to like number 2 and it talks about project costs and allocation. Again, the total cost of the project shall be, that's where, there's multiple places where project cost is defined as the 1,000,003.
Right.
Because I think we're looking at it as project costs that it's due to be funded by the towns. I mean, maybe it's something, even
I
adding
think
that
just
language.
adding the word net, the
Yeah,
net total cost of the project, because the schools are paying 350 out of E&D. So
right.
Right. Or
a
to
simple
define
word.
project as just the net, the amount subject to funding.
Yeah, well, the
Something like
D
that.
D does actually define what we're saying as the
Right.
project, the district,
You're right. No, you're
right.
right.
So, I mean, that's how we've looked at it. Again, I look at this as not no different than when you go to the ballot and you're voting for the debt exclusion. You're not really voting for the project, you're voting for the funding mechanism. And so the project has already been voted by everyone separately.
Yep.
And this is mainly just a document to approve how what we're asking you to fund is going to be funded. That's why we look at it like that.
Right. Again, I understand, Dawn, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying when something says the total cost of the project
Uh, yeah.
and
Okay.
it's three hundred and
Well,
fifty thousand short, it's not the total cost.
right. Okay. But we will revisit that if we have a situation where the region, I don't have a whole lot of E&D, but if we have a situation where there will be partial funding, we can revisit the language.
We'll see in 10 years when this one needs to be replaced.
I don't, it won't be, it'll be much easier. This is a big renovation.
Oh, I know. I'm teasing, but
Yeah.
I've said my piece. That's what I just wanted to make sure that it was I's dotted, T's crossed. The substance is not at all at issue.
Right. It's the right. I get it.
All right. So did we vote this? No.
No.
No,
Okay. So I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement between the town of Dover, the town of Sherborne, and the Sherborne Regional School District dated May 22nd, 2025.
You want a second one, Cam?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor, aye, Robin Hunter.
I, Dave Haviland.
I can, Hudson.
Excellent. We're
As a
getting
matter of,
it.
as a
We're
matter of
getting
how did we get IMA out of intergovernmental
Yeah.
agreement?
Oh, because it's intermunicipal. IMA is intermunicipal.
Okay.
And then I think, yeah. And we've always said IMA. You say IMA, and I know what you're talking about. It always throws me off, but I think the legal is intergovernmental agreement.
It's an
We will,
IGA.
yeah, we will. I know that doesn't sound as good as IMA. We
Right.
will. I will prepare 3 copies because we get full signatures on these, so that school committee, your whole select and board, and same with Sherburne. So I will get 3 prepared. And we'll just move them along if that's okay. And then everyone will have their
Yeah.
originals, as we do put the town and the region seal on these. So I will get this in progress tomorrow morning.
Okay, and
Get
Mona
processed.
will, don't worry, Mona will hurt
Yes,
us.
get you. Yes.
Yeah.
I believe you.
She hunts us down.
Yeah, she hunts us down.
No,
She's,
you guys you're usually pretty quick, I will have to say, on getting things signed. So I appreciate that.
well, we have a
That's Mona.
It's all
secret
due to
weapon.
Mona, I'm sure.
Well, thank you. And I do think the town of Dover, it was fully supported at the town meeting. And again, we are just really looking forward to that summer work, along with the summer work of the rooftop unit. So there is a lot of money, town money being spent on campus. But I think it's all just really needed projects, and we're very excited to open school back up with brand new rooftop units in the high school, and a sparkling, brand new looking turf facility now that we also have the bleachers and the press box.
Maybe we could have flag football game against the Sherburne Selectmen or something, just so that we can play on the field.
Maybe.
We can have the staff, the Dover staff, a friendly game.
You break it in.
Can we be the first on it? We'll sign a waiver. Wouldn't that be fun? We could get t-shirts.
Getting a little carried away, Robin.
I'm on this. I'm on this. Well, we have to have some fun.
I agree.
All right, so Dawn, you're up. Then the next item of business is
Uh,
request for a waiver of permit fees for the rooftop HVAC system, I believe.
Right. So this is, I always say this is the longest running project I think I've ever had to deal with. But we are excited. We've had our kickoff meeting this week for this project as well. And the issue of asking for the fees to be waived actually came up when we were doing our site visits with the contractors, and that question was asked to us. And I followed up with the building department, and that's when they said that any waiving of the fees would be approved by the select board, the board of selectmen. And so I think I had mentioned it to you, Robin, is that something you guys would entertain? And it was. So I waited until they were sort of ready to start the job, so that was more timely with them actually filing for their permits. And so we are asking for this particular project, which is an approximate cost of $2 million, to have the approximate permit fees of $20,000 waived. This is the first time we have actually asked to do this. But again, it came up from the contractors who said it's pretty typical what they see. And I thought it was worth exploring because it does save us money because it's just recycled money. So if the region was paying it, then, you're paying part of what's going to you at the building department. So it makes sense in this circumstance to move forward. You can decide if it's something we should do more frequently, or if it's a case by case basis. But we did feel we wanted to, after having conversations with the contractors, wanted to bring this forward because it's not included in the bids as of now, because we felt comfortable that we could get them be able to get them waived for this. So it would be a change order if you don't approve it.
So I have a recollection of doing this for the turf field the first time around.
Okay. Back in
So
2012.
yeah, and I remember, talking to Dave Ramsey and talking to Walter about that. And I'm almost certain that Walter or Dave Ramsey said to me, this is something we do for town building projects, and that extends to the region. I mean, we are it's a region, so we're giving Sherborne a break by doing this, but I think it's for the benefit of the entire community. And that certainly was, I remember the conversation that we had when we did the turf field the first
Turf
time.
field. Yeah.
Uh,
We
I-
did pay permit fees on the bleachers.
Okay.
And I think we paid on some of the other projects. But again, this was something that was a request from the contractors on site, and I thought it was worth exploring.
Okay, so I know, for me, I know there was a precedent set before. I'm certainly comfortable waiving these fees because I do look at the region as part of Dover and a huge asset to us. And maybe, following this vote, maybe we should have a more extensive conversation about, how we approach this in the future and what the right thing to do for the region is. But I don't know what Dave or Cam's position is on waiving these fees. So I'm gonna turn the table up. I'm gonna let them to speak.
So my first reaction is, can we waive half? Because that would be Dover's share, and I guess there's no mechanism for that. You don't need to make a kerfluffle over $10,000, but at the same point in time, somewhere in the favor bank, this is $10,000 that we're waiving. And if this precedence is going to be there, we still have to pay our building inspectors salary and wages. So it's not just a fake line item. And there are other things that the town of Dover happily covers and should cover, police, fire, ambulance, snow plowing, maintenance, and this is just getting added to the list. So if we can remember this the next time there's any dispute about the regional agreement and paying, I would be grateful because these things do add up, and over time, it's not inconsequential. It's real money.
We'll say, Dave, just so you know, like snow plowing, maintenance, that's all in the region's budget. We pay for all that.
Okay, that's good to know. So
Yeah, I mean,
thank
the
you for
fire
correcting
police,
me.
obviously, right? That we
Yep.
live in the town, but
Yep.
for that very reason, we do all of our own plowing. That it's paid for by the region, all of our own maintenance. So I think that's where that's equitable. That a large part of maintaining that campus sits in the region's budget and is equitably shared based on the census ratio. So I mean, it's really it's a little, if you want, it's like 46% versus like, it's not quite 10,000. Sherburne's, it's not quite 50-50
Understood.
if you want to look at it that way. But, and I totally agree. We think about that a lot. I mean, it's an unusual, not unusual situation, but it's difficult. You can't, it's all in or it doesn't happen, in a lot of cases. So, Dover can't pick to fund something and Sherburne does. That was the conversation we were having about the turf field. Like, what were we going to do? If one town passed it and one town didn't, then we weren't going to have a project. So it's
No,
two towns
I
have to
hear,
work collaborative. And Clamp, you've had more experience just coming off of Warrant because you work so closely with advisory.
Mhm. Um, no, I hear you, Dave. But I think for this particular case, it might make sense to follow Robin's suggestion of let's approve it this time and perhaps have a review of the processes we follow going forward.
Oh, I'm totally happy with that, Cam and Robin. I just wanted to state the obvious. It's almost $10,000 that we are basically giving another town.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a tough one for me because I don't want to tax Dover citizens, and I really view the region as part of our community.
Of course.
Right. So I'm going to move to approve waiving the building permit fee associated with the Dover Sherburne High School rooftop replacement project.
Second, with your caveat of we're going to look at this in the future.
Right, right. All in favor? I, Robin Hunt.
Oh, I didn't second.
Oh.
No, I don't need a second, right? Got to get these processes sorted
Excuse me,
out.
I, Dave Haviland.
Hi,
Easy
Cam
for you to
Hudson.
say.
Okay. So Dawn, maybe we could at some
Yeah.
point sort of set
And
up.
then, do you think it would be worthwhile, as you know, looking at the 5-year capital plan, we have some large projects and some
Right.
more RTU replacements. So I think it's a timely conversation because I do think there's projects coming down the pike just like this in the next couple of years. So anytime you would like to, pull a team together, we're more than happy
Yeah.
to sort of talk that through, and it can be with, members of Sherburne as well,
Right.
just to it's important to understand. So this will be, communicated. I'll communicate this to the regional school committee at their meeting in June, and obviously we will, thank the town of Dover and sort of highlight the fact that Sherburne is sort of getting a little bit of a bonus from this decision.
Right. And maybe it makes sense to just get like a member of the school committee, a member, one from Sherburne, one from Dover, somebody from the Board of Selectmen in Dover, somebody from the Board of Selectmen in Sherburne, and you, and just kind of have a working group and a conversation about how to make this more equitable.
Right. I agree.
All right. Sounds great.
Is
Well,
there anything,
thank you.
just so, Michael, does this go to the building department, or is there something I need to do?
No, so Mona will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we just sent a memo that it was approved and you should be all set.
Okay.
See,
Thank
once
you.
again, Mona's in charge.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for your time, and Cam, welcome.
Thank you,
We
John.
worked with Cam so much on the schools, and so it's a pleasure to have you join, and be able to continue to work with you. So
Yeah, we're thrilled.
yeah,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
All right, so then how are we doing? Oh my God, I'm behind schedule. All right, so the next item, I'm turning it over to you, Chris, is which is very exciting. It's the the power aggregation
Yeah.
contract bid. So I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So
This has been
obviously,
your baby.
yes, yes, and I'm very excited to bring the proposal before the board tonight for our municipal energy aggregation consulting services. So tonight I'd like to introduce Paul Gromer of Mass Power Choice. But before I turn it over to Paul, I just want to give a brief recap of how this proposal came to fruition and what we went through to get to this point. So it all started at town meeting in 2024 when we received approval to pursue municipal aggregation for the community. Following the approval in town meeting, we, as in town staff, started researching municipal aggregation programs across the state to develop a request for proposals for consulting services. Although we're a little bit behind compared to other communities, we do have the advantage of seeing how it's been done over the years across the state. So our research really led us to establish a few key requirements for our proposal. I won't go through all of them, but I just wanted to mention two. The first being that we sought somebody with a really strong depth and experience for implementing these types of aggregation plans in communities. And second, we wanted somebody or a company that could provide a robust community outreach program to ensure our residents are well informed about what's happening and any changes that they're going to experience with their energy services. So in February, we issued that RFP. We received one response. Although we only received one response, we're extremely pleased that Mass Power Choice chose to submit a proposal. They not only met our criteria in the RFP, but subsequent discussions with Paul and his team really reinforced our belief that they would be a great fit for our community and in our plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paul, who's just going to provide us with an overview of his company and the services that they provide and what it'll look like for our community. So Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. And I did, and thank you for taking the time to meet with me this evening or let me join your meeting this evening. I have a couple of slides. Is there a way to present those? I could share my screen, or what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, Paul, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, everyone see the slides okay? So
Yes.
as Chris said, all I'm going to do tonight is just take a few minutes to introduce my company, to explain at a very high level what these programs are about and how they work, and then give you a brief timeline so that you'll know what to expect. So what we are at Mass Power Choice, we're a Boston-based energy consulting firm. We've developed a specialty in municipal aggregation programs. We work with 41 cities and towns across the state, including larger communities like Cambridge and Newton and Worcester, but also many smaller communities I think you might think of as similar communities. We work with Sherburne, we work with Lincoln, we work with Wayland, Weston, and other number of communities like that. What municipal aggregation is group buying for electricity managed by a city or town. As Chris mentioned, it's very popular in Massachusetts. Over 200 municipalities have these programs in place already. The benefits are new electricity choices for customers, stable prices, cleaner electricity if the town would like, and the potential for savings compared with Eversource basic service prices. Very briefly, the way it works is that the town would sign a contract with an electricity supplier who becomes the supplier for the program, and their price for supply becomes the supply price on the customer's Eversource bill.
And then basically your firm goes out and runs a process
Exactly
for
right.
so you put out, it actually goes to bid, and then we make a determination probably based upon price.
That's correct. So as we'll run we'll assist the town in running a procurement process. You'll get bids from the electricity suppliers that supply programs like this. And then you'll choose one. There are slight differences between the firms, so that might be a factor, but usually price is the biggest determinant for towns.
And typically, how many suppliers can we expect to bid on the process?
That's a good question. So it depends a bit on when you do it, since firms come in and out of the market. But
Okay.
right now, there are about 4 or 5 firms supplying these programs.
I have a question on, I'm wondering if you could explain what the difference between an individual resident going and finding the supplier and what the aggregation process provides us with as a benefit.
Yeah, so great question. So I'll just step back a bit to answer the question fully. So there are a few different ways customers can choose an electricity supplier in Massachusetts. By further background, supply is separate from delivery. So Eversource remains your delivery company no matter what, but you can choose the supplier. 3 different types of supply choices. One is a customer can choose a supplier individually, so one-on-one contract, and about 15 to 20% of customers in Massachusetts do that. And these are the firms that will reach out to you. Sometimes they phone, they send you mailings. Sometimes in cities they go door to door. So you can do that, or you can have the town play a similar function where it's the town who chooses the supplier for the residents and businesses in the community. The advantages of the supply program, of the town program, are a few. One is the town very typically gets a better price than you would get from an individual supplier. Also, with the town, the program is designed with the consumer in mind and designed to benefit the consumer. Whereas when you sign a contract with a private supplier, the contract is designed to benefit them. It doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad contract for the consumer, but it's not written with the consumer in mind, whereas the town's contract will be. And then the single biggest difference, I think, is that when you choose an electricity supplier one-on-one, at the end of your contract with them, they're allowed to raise the price to whatever they want, and you stay on it unless you say you don't want it anymore. With the town, it never works that way. We get to the end of a town program, the town will go out to bid again. The town gets a good price, we'll sign a new contract. If it doesn't, it won't. The supplier can't just charge whatever price they want at the end.
Thank you.
So this is just really a picture of how it works here. So it starts with, we have the customer all the way on the right. We'll go from right to left. The customer's all the way on the right. Eversource is in the middle doing the delivery. They do that no matter what. They restore power if it goes out. They read your meter. They send your bill. They do continue to perform all of those functions. It's over on the left, the electricity supplier that the town would choose through this program. To give you just a quick overview of the various steps. So believe it or not, it takes about a year to get from where we are now to having a program up and going.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed in the timeline when I looked at this.
It is. I mean, it might be possible to be a little bit faster, but not much really. There's some steps the town needs to complete, including having a 30-day public comment period. So you've got that 30 days in there no matter what. Then you file the plan with the state. The state needs to approve the plan. They say they reserve 4 months to do that. Sometimes they can be a little faster, but they too have a public hearing process, which includes a notice requirement. So there's a chunk of time for there. Then once the state approves it, that's when we go to the supply procurement that we were talking about earlier, where we'll help the town run a competitive process to choose the supplier. Then we do a public education period, so customers are informed about the program. And after all of that is when the program launches.
It's amazing to me, with all of your previous experience and practice of doing this, that it takes 5 to 8 months for program planning and regulatory review. You would think they would say, number 42, done.
Well, yes. I mean,
I
you would
know,
think,
that's why I was blown away by the length and duration of this process.
yes. I mean, it could be. I mean, the Department of Public Utilities can do it say in 2 months is about as fast as they could do it if they wanted. And this will sound crazy, but until recently, it took them several years. So
Wow.
2 or 3 years, these plans, of which they had approved over 100, they were waiting for 2, 3, and I think in Weston, the town we worked with, was over 3 years before it was approved. So now it's down to a few months. So
Right, so this is the shortened timeline.
yes, this is right. This is the fast track, is what we're looking at. So those are all my slides. I'm happy to talk more, happy to let you get on with the rest of your evening. I'll turn it back to you, Chris, whatever is your preference.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Paul. So I don't know if the board has any questions, but we're hopeful, to get an agreement in place and really dive into this process with Mass Power Choice and get going, so we can stay on that 1 year timeline. So I'll open up if anybody has any other questions for Paul. Just go right ahead.
I tell you what, if we approve this tonight, Paul, did you think you can move the timeline up by about 6 months?
Not 6, but I bet you I could find you 2.
All right, I'll take it.
All right, so Cam, do you have any more questions?
No,
Dave?
I don't,
Okay.
Robin.
So, thank you. Thank you, Paul. That was really helpful, and we are very excited and looking forward to getting this process started and completed. So I am going to move to approve the consulting agreement between Dover and Mass Power Choice for the development of management of the town's municipal aggregation program.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
Hi, Cam Hudson.
All right. Thank you,
And
Paul.
before we leave this, Robin, we have to thank Chris.
Right.
I mean, I
Indeed.
know he has spent a good deal of time on this. It was one of our goals for this year. Paul's going to try and
You
sneak
got
it.
it done under the wire.
Yeah, that's right. Paul's going to try and sneak it in before the end of the fiscal year, but I'm not hopeful.
Which fiscal year?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you, Dave. We're excited to get going on this. All the communications work we've done as well. I think the engagement's going to be pretty good out to the community. So we've laid a good foundation, and we're excited. Thank you, Paul, of course.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you all. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda is a presentation with Aquarian. Are they here?
Yep. So Chris, I think you can move everybody in except Bob.
Yep.
He's here for the item after.
Yep.
Okay, so just as some background information. So Aquarian is a private public water company that supplies water to approximately a third of the residents in Dover. They came before us in May, July, and November of 24, to update us, the Board of Selectmen, on a variety of water-related issues. Over the past few years, there have been some challenges that they've faced with the supply and quality of water, including discoloration, including PFAS, iron, magnesium, bacteria, and other issues. And they were exploring, ways or options in which to address these issues. Again, these are just options and they're not binding, but one of the options that they discussed with us was potentially the ability for them to explore an interconnection with the Dedham Westwood Water District, to bring water in through that distribution system to help alleviate some of these quality challenges that they have today. This is, the Board of Selectmen, we cannot make a decision to do this ourselves. This would ultimately have to go to town meeting. So where we are again, and the way I'm looking at this is we are getting additional data. We know we have water quality issues. I think 2 years ago, we had multiple meetings with many, many residents who are upset, and Aquarian has done a really good job as stewards of the process. But it's gonna take longer, and we need to really explore all of the options that we have to the town to rectify or fix some of these quality challenges that Aquarian is facing. So I'm going to turn it over to you because I am not a water expert. So thank you for joining us. We have a new member on the Board of Selectmen, Cam Hudson. So it would be great if maybe you guys could quickly introduce yourselves and your roles.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That'd be good. I'll run through some quick introductions to everybody just for the sake of time too, right? So from Aquarian, John Walsh is on here. John is the VP of Operations for Aquarian, overseeing Massachusetts and then some other functions in the other states that Aquarian serves. Amanda Keyes oversees capital projects in Massachusetts. And then from CDM, Ann Malenfant, who's the project manager on the CDM side and has also done a lot of work with other communities on MWRA acceptance and permitting. And then myself, Adam Simonson, also with CDM, who's handling a lot of the coordination with the town, and then also some of the financial pieces on this.
And just quickly as background information for Cam. So approximately 2 years ago, actually, the town hired CDM Smith to just help us take a look at water and the capacity of the aquifer, some of the options that could be available to us if we needed an alternate water supply, what the cost would be for that. It's a very extensive study. They did an excellent job. So it's probably worth brushing off and just taking a look at all the work that was done.
Absolutely. Thanks, Robin. So let me jump into these slides. I'm going to hit the first few, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ann, and then John and Amanda, absolutely chime in if we're missing anything, and certainly as you guys have questions, feel free to stop and interrupt, and hopefully we can answer things. So just in terms of what we're going to hit here, let's see if I can get all right. Quickly, we're going to give you an overview on the project, which should be somewhat of a recap for most of the selectmen. Obviously, Cam, this might be a little new to you, so I wanted to make sure we had a good introduction. What we're looking to get to today, there's a permitting step, this environmental notification form that has to get filed that we're looking to get approval to do. And then certainly make sure we get any other questions that you have answered as well. So Robin,
I'm generally familiar with it because I have monitored the Board of Selectmen meetings where you presented in the past. So I do have a reasonable overview of what's going on.
Okay, great. And Robin gave a pretty good introduction there too. That was great. So as she said, one of the solutions that we're exploring is this interconnection with Dedham Westwood Water District. Because Dedham Westwood is partially served by MWRA, it does require going through the full MWRA permitting process. The next slide, I'll hit on kind of the alternatives analysis of how we got there, but we do look at it as the best long-term solution to some of these water quality challenges that are out there. As part of this permitting, we do have to put in essentially what is the requested supply from MWRA, and what that permitting we're looking for is to essentially meet 2030 demands. It's a really pretty short planning period, but we think that's really appropriate. And at the end of the day, the sort of final step on all this, which Ann will kind of walk through the process, the town would actually be the party signing a contract with MWRA in terms of the water supply. And so the amount of water coming into through that interconnection, the town would ultimately govern that, even though Aquarian would be the fiduciary that would take all the financial responsibility and obviously, have the responsibility for distributing the water through the distribution system, et cetera. And at the end of the day, we really look at it as the most cost-effective solution.
May I
Just as
quickly
a
ask
quick,
a question there? What are the other solutions that you're looking at? Because you opened with you're looking at this other solutions. May I ask what those are?
Yeah. The next slide here actually talks through.
before we move on to that, I've got a quick question on what are the I know that there are connection costs that we'll have to pay to connect to the Westwood, the Dedham Westwood Water District. What are the ongoing costs that we may have to incur by water wheeling through that
Yeah.
system, or is the water completely just transferred at zero incremental cost?
Yeah, so there's a couple pieces to it, right? So at the end of the day, the rates that Aquarian charges, right, will end up covering all the costs, right? And so there's costs essentially associated with the current sources that are there, and from an interconnection point of view, there's a couple different things going on. One, MWRA for the time being has waived any sort of interconnection fees that you have to pay to MWRA.
Okay.
So that right now we're in a very good spot with that. There are capital costs that are laid out on this slide here, which essentially is that the upfront infrastructure costs essentially, and then there will be fees associated with the bulk water purchase from MWRA. And then one of the things that we're working through preliminarily with Dedham Westwood is trying to calculate what is an appropriate wheeling charge. So essentially the use of their distribution system to bring that water through the system.
Okay.
And so the sort of short answer to all that question, when we look at all the costs associated with bringing all the treatment that we would need to existing sources versus the total costs of using this interconnection. The interconnection, so the total life cycle costs are about over 50% less. And so it's sort of hands down from a cost-effective approach, a much better solution for the customers in Dover.
So, and this would just be the treatment infrastructure that would be passed on to the customer.
What do you mean when you say treatment infrastructure?
Because if, ultimately there needs to be a vote on whether this is the way the town wants to go, because
Right.
we need to look at whether or not there are any unintended consequences. And one of the big, as a customer, what I would need to understand is what is potentially the cost to me when you buy connecting through Westwood, the Dedham Westwood, versus what would be the cost to me if a treatment infrastructure or a plant was put in place to treat the water in Dover. Because that's really important. Right now, Dover residents pay some of the highest water prices, I believe, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yep.
So, in order to make an educated decision and make a decision that's right for the town, we need to really understand the various options that are available to us and also the pros and cons of each of those options. Like full disclosure, my house, I am a customer of Aquarian. I got a little postcard about your water quality. So I went to look at it, and reading that report, it seems to me that you're in compliance with all the requirements, including PFAS. So, y- y- was that because this report is for 2024 and issues have happened subsequent to that? I know that, I know over by Springdale there were high levels of PFAS, and that spiked. So I think, these are all things that we need to understand. Like, are we at risk drinking the water today because of the levels of PFAS?
Yeah. Let me hit your question about rates first, and then I think
Okay.
John, it's probably appropriate for John to chime in on and talk about the water quality piece, right? So where from a rates perspective, right? We right now, with the information that we have, we believe that the interconnection the rate impact is about 50% less than it is building the treatment infrastructure. And that's sort of that's an all-in cost, right? And as you said, Aquarian is being extremely cautious about how it is solving these problems in Dover because of the rate impacts, right? I mean, that is it's a foremost concern there. As we and what we're asking to do tonight is to just be able to take a step forward on the permitting process of this, right? There's no other commitments here. What we would anticipate that as this gets farther down the road, and as you said, there ultimately would need a town meeting approval to join. Part of that presentation and information at a town meeting approval, we'll certainly need more information in terms of potential rate impacts, more detailed information. And we will be farther along there in terms of knowing exactly what a contract with Dedham Westwood would look like in terms of what the fees would be there, and et cetera, and have a little more detail in terms of all the infrastructure. Where we've been looking at it now is to basically say, we've got, two good options. One is twice as expensive as the other. So we should certainly be putting our energy into the less expensive solution, right? And
Right, but by the same token, I can't help but ask, what can be done to reduce the cost of the 11.7 million solution? Because there's no guarantees that the less expensive option is going to pass a town meeting. So as a fiduciary of the town, it is our responsibility here to present two fully vetted viable options to the town. So we need to have confidence and assurances that both potential options have been fully vetted, and we are presenting the best possible information to the town.
No, absolutely. No, and I think, I don't know, John, if you
but may I also jump in?
Yeah.
Because there is a potential third option that I'm not sure you all even know about. But there are 31 and a half acres that were given to the town by the Ponzi family, no relation to the financial Ponzi. And they gave this property to the town to supply water in the future. And if we could come up with a new well field right here in town and supply the water ourselves, to me, that seems like a much lower rate possibility. You're going to have to connect to the Dedham Westwood district with pipes, and you therefore laying the pipes from the Ponzi family to the existing infrastructure. It would be a similar expense. And until this is explored, I don't think we've done all our homework. And personally, I have grave reservations about moving ahead with MWRA. And I think I need to explain this. If we connect and get an unlimited water supply, even though Dover may limit that water supply, I have recently become aware that there have been two state agencies that have demanded that Aquarian connect to one, a 15 home well system, which would require additional infrastructure for you to put in. And two, a separate state agency is demanding that you supply water to a 40B project, which your initial response was, well, we can't do it right now, but if we connect to MWRA, we can, which then brings in the probably the most important thing to the most amount of voters in the town of Dover, which is preserving our town's current character of being rural with open spaces and no large apartment or building blocks. If we get unlimited water, the fear, which is a very real fear, is that now we are going to have 4 to 6 story 40B projects getting put wherever a builder wants, and the state is just going to simply mandate to you supply the water, and all of Dover's rules, regulations, and bylaws don't count with 40B. So this is a very real concern of mine going forward. And I'll tell you right now that I cannot in any way, shape, or form get around connecting to MWRA because at least until we have fully explored the new option, which is the Ponzi property, is can we put a well field in here, which will do several things, allow Dover to still control what's going on. And two, it should be much less because we don't have to pay MWRA nor Dedham West District for, what you call it, the wheeling fees. So it's got to be a cheaper rate to our fellow residents.
Dave, against that, there's the other issue of trying to understand how much capacity the aquifers under the town have and what's available. And if we put all our eggs into that aquifer, we might still in a few years find that we have to find some alternative. So that's something else we need to consider there, I think.
Oh, so that was already studied and considered in the water study, and we actually did a modeling exercise on the capacity of the aquifer. So let me get you a copy of that.
No, I've actually seen that, Robin, and I understand that. My concern with that particular study is that the modeling was based upon people who are consuming water through Aquarian. And as we know through Economics 101, if people are paying for something, they'll consume less of it than if they're getting it for free. And so I've got no real confidence that those proxies really work. And I think we need to, I mean, that's not necessarily a precondition for this discussion tonight, but I think we need to start considering what our options are in that space as well.
So there is, because there are no meters, and we can have this discussion at another time, because
yeah, exactly.
there is no way to measure it, the consumption.
But we might be able to have meters if we could.
So we did extrapolate in that modeling, and they did take into account some of that. So I'm not going to have that discussion this evening.
No, I fully agree with you there.
Before us is you know, what are the options for Aquarian? So personally, for me, I have similar concerns to Dave. However, there is a compliance issue here. And my position is we're not making any decisions. We're only gathering facts so that we know what the options are. So this evening, from my perspective, what Aquarium and CDM Smith is asking, they're saying, will you give us permission so we can continue this process so we can bring back the facts to you to present at town meeting? None of what we're doing is going to obligate you to enter into an agreement with the MWRA. By the same token, I express my other concerns that I understand based upon this initial review, this is the least cost option. However, there are these unintended consequences to the town of Dover. So it is very important to me personally that we explore this treatment facility and truly understand what the costs are and get the best possible cost that we can for this capital project. And also Dave added a third option, which is that Ponzi property even a viable option? And again, there is the question of the capacity of the aquifer, which the only way you can figure out what it is to do some kind of a model, because there is no way for us to understand what the water consumption is for those individuals that have private wells. The other thing we did is we put we utilize monitoring wells in town so that we can look at the water levels. So, this is a bigger issue. And there are a lot of pros and cons to any of these options. But the only way, in my opinion, is we need to explore all of these options. So I guess my question to Aquarian is, clearly, are you out of compliance or not? What is the time frame by which a decision needs to be made? And how quickly we need to move all three options forward at the same place and put the same amount of diligence into each of them and not just focus on option one.
That's well said, Robin. Thank you.
Again, I'm John Walsh, Vice President of Operations for Aquarion. Regarding the compliance question, we are in compliance. There's actually
So I didn't misread that report.
correct, yes. Yeah, and you had brought up the question of the Springdale. So we actually have two separate water systems in town, what's called the Dover main system and the Springdale farm system. The Dover main system has two separate distribution systems. One is very small. We call it the Chickering system. It's over on Chickering Ave. There's only like 15 customers there. But in terms of compliance, you brought up PFAS with Springdale Farms. We have built a treatment facility at Springdale Farms to treat the water at those wells because they did at one point have PFAS levels that were over the state limit. Those levels came down, but we still implemented the treatment. With respect to the Dover main system, you'll see on the screen here, Francis refers to our Francis Street well field. The Francis Street well field is in compliance from a water quality perspective, but it has relatively high metals certain times of the year, and those two metals are iron and manganese. And there are no primary regulations that limit the amount of iron and manganese you can have in the water. There are secondary limits that are more aesthetic. They're non-enforceable. But we have enough manganese in particular in the water there that it imparts discoloration to the water. We have made changes, or we invested in the system when we first bought it, and we have now made Francis Street about a year and a half ago a secondary source in the system. That resolved the discolored water problems that many customers were seeing for our understanding before we bought it for years. So the primary goal here is to address that particular issue. Francis Street Wellfield imparts discoloration to the water. We can either treat that water or we can find a different source of supply. And the different source supply is the interconnection. And we looked seriously at building a treatment facility at the Francis Street Wellfield, and the cost, as you can see here, along with the other wellfield nearby Francis Street Draper, was almost $12 million. The Francis Street Wellfield also has PFAS that is getting close to the new EPA limit. So that treatment, we are going to have to put treatment in there for the metals, iron and manganese, and for PFAS. So when you start to look at a well field that's going to require those two levels of treatment, it really brings up the question of, is that a long-term viable source of supply? I can tell you that the Draper well field has PFAS levels that are very high, much higher than the uh, regulatory limit in the state of Massachusetts. We have not used that well field since we bought the system. Um, so that is out of service, and I expect that will remain out of service.
So then your primary well field is Knollwood?
Exactly, the Knollwood well field, yes. Um, So the primary
So
goal here
can,
again is to address that issue where our secondary wellfield, Francis, which we still use every day to some extent to keep it active, um, address the issue with the metals there that cause the discoloration. And again, it can be treatment or another source. Um,
Wasn't
reg-
the amount of water being pulled out creating a lot of the iron and manganese? I mean, it was a lot of new homes. It's right over there for me. So a lot of new homes were built in the area and in the neighborhood, and the demand was well above what the regulator was suggesting was allowable. And the amount that was taken out of that well was well in excess of it. It was a multiple. I just don't remember exactly how much. And then the well field became stressed and it became dirtier and dirtier with more iron and manganese. And so, again, I, anyone can overdo a well. Anyone can take out more than that well can handle. And that is clearly what appeared to happen to me as a layperson. But also, if we were to spread out the demand across the town and perhaps even if need be, limit it, because if there is a real fear of 40 Bs going up in town, I will tell you that your MWRA connections, chances of passing at a town meeting are close to zero.
and
So,
that would put us in a situation where we don't have to look at treatment of the Francis Street well field at the costs that you see. I believe about 8.5 million of that 11.7 million is at Francis Street. And it would put us in the situation where we'd have to put treatment at that Francis Street well field. And our job is to make sure that we provide water at the lowest possible cost. Um, I should say,
but
with
that's
respect to
fair.
the
I mean,
Francis Street,
you work for a company and your company's purpose is to sell water, so that makes total sense. But this may be a case where your desire and goals may not be completely congruent with what the town's goals are. I mean, you're
well,
beholden to your stockholders first and your regulators and customers next, and Dover is left somewhere off on the path. And one of our roles is to make sure that we do not agree to solve one problem by creating an absolute nightmare. And if I may, completely ruining the bucolic community that we all moved to in the first place. And so I please understand that this isn't being done to be difficult. This isn't being done. It is literally trying to preserve our local way of life. And that is the level of concern that I have. But we do have a new alternative for you to explore. 31 and a half acres on that Ponzi property, and it was given to the town with the express purpose of providing water in the future. Well, the future's here. And so we need you to look at that well field. For all I know, that's polluted and wouldn't help at all. So I don't know, but we need to find out because I am very concerned about the viability of connecting to MWRA in any way, shape, or form.
I should say, I'd like to clarify, you mentioned Francis Street Wellfield. The iron and manganese, that wasn't from usage that's not impacted by the usage. The first year we owned the system, which was the 2022, that was our primary well field. The water quality was great through that whole season. The next year, summer 2023, was a wet summer, and the water quality was terrible. High iron, high manganese. It literally changed over a matter of a couple weeks. And that was because the water table came up. So it's really the water table that's impacting whether there's iron or manganese. That well field has shown us, especially that first year, that there's, from a capacity perspective, it's a good well field. To my knowledge, it was never pumped over, even prior to our usage. We have the records on it. It wasn't pumped over any regulatory limit. So
We need to revisit that because, unless I'm completely misremembering, which is possible.
So I think what you're remembering is when there was discoloration in the water and there were many meetings with the DEP, and I think it was Colonial Water. The DEP noted that in the summer months, we were drawing in excess water in excess of the permit. So the permit allowed for X number of gallons, and in the summer months that we were withdrawing in excess of that amount. So I think that's what you may be referring to. And then there were individuals on the call that asked whether or not drawing more water than the permit was contributing to some of the water quality issues.
That sounds about right, Robin. Again, that's pre-Aquarian, and I understand that it was Colonial. But
Right, but Aquarian has really, again, full disclosure, I'm a customer, but they have been really great stewards with respect to water conservation. Whoever does your marketing or those educational brochures does a really good job. And, again, they remind us all on when you can water and how much you can water. This month, it hasn't been an issue at all.
Agreed. No, I want to make sure that Aquarian is aware of a possible third option to then start exploring, and B, please don't put all your eggs in the MWRA connection basket, because as Robin's opened with, it may not pass at town meeting, and that is a real possibility.
No, and I think we're extremely aware of that, right? And what we're trying to do is to keep as many options open as possible, right? That is the goal. And I think what would be helpful if we can is I'd like to have Anne just walk through the MWRA process and let you see, because that is a multi-year process in and of itself. And really what we're looking for today is we want to get that started so that we can keep options open. So let me just hit this. Just as a refresher for folks where we're talking about in terms of actual infrastructure here. This is you can see on the map here, this is Hartford Street. Here is the Dover Westwood line. This green pipe shows essentially where there's existing Dedham Westwood infrastructure. And so the actual infrastructure that is contemplated around this is adding water main in Dover, a little bit into Westwood. It's about a half mile or so of water main altogether. And then some kind of vault or possibly a structure, depending on if there are any water quality adjustments needed. And so from an infrastructure perspective, from an environmental impact perspective, et cetera, it's pretty minimal. But again, thought it was important that we just talk about the location of this as we talked about the other pieces of this.
And the proposal is that this would be the main water source, not a backup water source.
Yeah, I mean, like, John said today, Knollwood is the primary source, right? And what every water utility wants, right, is you want resiliency in your supply, right? So that if something happens one place or the other, is that you have the ability to supply um, the system, right? And so the idea would be that we would hopefully use both sources, right? So Knollwood remains as a source, MWRA remains as a source. You have the ability to shut Knollwood down to do maintenance, to do other activities as needed. If there's an issue on the MWRA side or on the Dedham Westwood side, you'd be able to obviously have that shut down and be able to use Knollwood as well too. So it would be that you would have both sources. And I think, and I don't know, John, I mean, operationally, I think it would be TBD, right? In terms of what would actually be considered the primary source, right?
Right. So the skeptic in me says, well, Aquarian's in the business of supplying water. That's how they make money. So now you have two water sources, and I could see this coming up at town meeting. So
Sure.
you have even more capacity. That certainly benefits your bottom line, and for us, it provides a huge disincentive because it's going to promote massive development that's going to change the character of Dover. And that makes this a really hard sell for the town.
So, I mean, Aquarian's motivation here, right, is, as John said, to find the lowest cost solution to serve our existing customers, right? We have an obligation to do that, right? That is a foremost obligation. It is part of the regulations around being a water company, right? And so,
Adam,
that is,
I'll,
yeah, go ahead, John.
Adam, I'll add in that
Yeah.
whatever project we do here, it doesn't automatically go into the rates. It will go through at our next rate case, whenever that is. It gets reviewed by the Department of Public Utilities. So they will fully vet and make sure that we made the decisions that make sense for the community.
Yeah.
Our primary goal here is to address this issue of the discolored water. That is the primary goal. It's not to get more water. It is to address the risk of discolored water, which is still there at that Francis Street well field.
Yeah.
We just don't use that water that much. So, most customers aren't receiving Francis Street water anymore.
Yeah. And if there was an issue at Knollwood and we had to ramp up production back up at Francis Street, right? It increases the likelihood of all of those things happening. So.
Oh, at my home, I didn't like the discolored water and I put in a water treatment
Yeah.
system. So 'cause
Um,
I didn't like my clothes getting stained, but that's just me.
Just one further curiosity on that last slide. When the pipe goes through from Westwood into Ledgewood there, is that going to rip up the road as well, or is it going to be beside the road?
no, it would be in the roadway, right? And part of that
So there'll be disruption then to actually do that over a period of time.
And any kind of water main replacement always does, and part of any water project is restoration of the.
No, I just wanted to understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's part of the budget that's in there too, is road restoration, et cetera. And I think what we would ideally do, what you always try to do on those, is coordinate with DPW in terms of their paving schedules as well too, so that you're hopefully avoiding ever cutting into fresh pavement, and you time it with when that road would need to be paved anyway.
And
yeah, so Ann, do you want to just walk us through this process a little bit? Let me flip to the next slide here.
Yep. Thank you, Adam. So I mean, the goal of walking through these next few slides is just to really illustrate how many steps are involved in this process. As Adam mentioned, it's it's a multi-year process at a very minimum. If you can move through every step very quickly, it's about 2 years. From when you start the process until you sign the contract with MWA for water supply. And there's multiple agencies involved with it, not just MWA. So this is really governed by the fact, starting from the left of this slide, that MWA withdraws water from a different water basin. There's, I think, 24 water basins in Massachusetts. If you move water from one basin to another, that is governed under what's called the Interbasin Transfer Act. And that's under the Water Resources Commission, which is a multi-agency group that reviews that to make sure that you really need to move that water, that you have looked at every option, and that is really the only option for getting water. They don't want water moved from one basin to another. They really want to keep it within basins if at all possible. So the initial step in this Interbasin Transfer Act is done through MIPA, really just for MIPA's for environmental review. It's to make sure you look at all aspects of environmental impacts, that you're mitigating them, that you understand them, that you're coordinating with the right groups. So the first step with MIPA is an environmental notification form, the basic information, where impacts might be. And then that gets expanded to something more substantial, which is the environmental impact report, which really gets into the details. So obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about the ENF step and then the environmental impact report, or the EIR step. So once you get through that process and you have basically an approved EIR, that's used as the application for the interbasin transfer. Now, WRC, with the interbasin transfer, they're involved through this whole process. As far as the EIR, they have a whole scope that they want to see addressed in the EIR, in addition to what MIPA specifically looks for. So there's a lot of information that needs to be provided. You have to show that alternatives analysis. You have to show why this is the only option, what the impacts are as far as the cost impacts, the environmental impacts, all of those pieces. And then if you can get through the process, then you can start with the actual Interbasin Transfer Act approval process, which is a whole nother series of public meetings and input before you get to the endpoint with the WRC and approval of the Interbasin Transfer Act. Through all of this, as you move on to, once you have Interbasin Transfer Act approval, then you can move on to the MWA approval process, admission to the MWA. But, as obviously a lot of what we're talking about tonight is, you have to demonstrate to MWA that acceptance of admission, and this is from town meeting. So that's a really critical piece for MWA, is showing acceptance of admission by the community.
And could I interrupt just for a second? Did I understand it correctly when you were saying that to get this interbasin transfer approval, there can't be any other alternatives? Now, we've already spoken about the Francis Street as an alternative, if more expensive solution. And we've also got the potential alternative that Dave has raised from the Ponzi property. Would they exclude ever getting an interbasin transfer approval or not?
They wouldn't, because part of the criteria for evaluation, one of them is cost. So you do a cost analysis to show that it's basically cost prohibitive to go with those other options, that this is the best cost-effective option.
You don't know that with the Ponzi property.
Yep.
You could drop a well right now and it could start supplying water. So please don't say that that third option is expensive when we don't even know anything about it.
Yeah, and obviously I'm speaking to the two options that we've presented previously, and that would have been the alternatives analysis. But that is part of what going through this process is, that you have to document and illustrate all of those alternative analysis. And if something does come up, then that needs to be vetted and run through this process.
Great.
So another piece of it is there's the Enabling Act from MWRA, that basically the establishment of the MWRA, the community has to be added to that Enabling Act. Each community is labeled, by name. So that's a legislative process. Can take a long time. That often is done in parallel, but that legislation is written such that if for whatever reason it doesn't make it to the finish line, you don't end up joining MWRA. It's null and void. And then again, in the very end, you go through the process of, through the MWRA, the advisory board, and the board of directors. They have all of their requirements as far as joining the MWRA. Many of them overlap with what the WRC is looking for in basin transfer, especially when it comes to water conservation, things like that. And then this end piece, which is why we're here tonight, is that the MWRA must be a municipal entity to enter into the contract with the MWRA. So the town would enter into the water supply contract with the MWRA. Do you want to speak to this last piece at all, Adam?
Yeah, well, I'll just add, right? I mean, I think probably should be underlined and in bold, right? It's sort of that last step, but ultimately, the town, that water supply contract with MWRA would have a volume of water in it, and it is the town signing that contract. The town becomes the ultimate decider of how much water would be allowed through that MWRA connection.
That is not necessarily true, because if the governing body of the 40Bs come in and says, we hereby demand that you supply water to this 40B project, they've done that already. And so if another one comes up right smack dab in the middle of town or anywhere along our beautiful scenic roads, they can mandate it. And Dover's say in our bylaws and regulations do not count.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with a mandate that you're talking about, but I think and Anne can probably talk to this, because Anne has worked on multiple of these agreements with other towns, right? That ultimately, if you can't just go ahead and increase volume in there because somebody wants it to be that way. You have to go back through this entire process that we're talking about, where it gets reviewed by Water Resources Commission, MEPA, et cetera. There's a lot of regulations around being able to move water resources across various municipal borders within the Commonwealth.
Well,
Yeah,
then I think what we really need to understand is, has mass housing basically told Aquarian that they have to find a way to find the capacity to supply water for the pastures too.
I don't know. I mean,
I think as
I don't know
part of
anything
the-
about that, so I don't know,
As
John.
part of the permitting process, I know that one of the steps that occurred was the developer did approach Aquarian to ask if Aquarian had the capacity to supply water. I believe what initially occurred was that Aquarian said they do. And then another letter, and I haven't seen this letter, so I'm not sure if this actually exists, but there was another form of communication that in which Aquarian said they did not have the capacity right now to supply that water. However, mass housing said not having water wasn't sufficient reason to disallow the construction of a second apartment building. And, clearly for us in the town of Dover, it's not that we don't want development. We have one water source, whether you're getting your water from Aquarian or whether you have a well in your backyard. We have one aquifer. And for us, it's a real threat, to survival as a town. We have no infrastructure. The MD Smith report, basically said we would have to spend $200 million to put infrastructure in place to supply the entire town with MWRA water. So this is a real concern of the towns, and these are the types of questions that are going to be asked at town meeting. And we're just trying to understand, I completely understand from a business perspective why you're doing what you're doing, but to Dave's point, we need to make sure that all viable options are properly explored.
And I should, first of all, regarding mass housing, this is the first I'm hearing anything about mass housing. No agency has said that we have to serve uh, any new development.
I've read it with my own eyes.
So I just want to, if I could step in, I think we're talking about the same thing in different ways. My understanding is, just from today, is that mass housing did not order Aquarian to supply water. What they did say, though, is that for the town, not having sufficient water, the ZBA cannot deny a comprehensive permit based on that. So while I understand why we're relating them, they are two distinct things. Even if Aquarian didn't exist, what the state is saying is that a town ZBA cannot say we disapprove of 40B because you haven't yet proven where you're going to get the water from. That is not a reason to disallow the permit. It is different than ordering a water company to supply water. So again, I'm not suggesting they couldn't do that, 10 years from now, but I just want to be clear. I learned today there is a distinction between that. So Aquarian has not received an order to provide water. However, the state has told the ZBA no water is not a sufficient reason to deny a permit. We can disagree or agree with that, but that's just, I think, what I learned today. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, and we're again, this mass housing, we have no knowledge of any communications. We're not involved in that. I'd also like to say, in terms of the business perspective, being completely sincere, what our goal is, we bought this system 3 years ago, real problems with water quality. It of course was causing a lot of stress on the community, on our customers. And we found a solution for the short term, required a fair number of projects and a fair number of investment to be able to serve the system with the Knollwood water, because up until we bought it, up until about a year and a half ago, we could only serve maybe a quarter of this, not even a quarter, maybe 15% of the system with the water from that better well field, Knollwood well field. But our goal here is to make sure that we can provide high quality water for the customers. That is absolutely sincere. Our first thought was, and we went through the preliminary design phases for treatment at the Francis Street well field. And when we saw the cost there, of course, we were very, surprised by it, and we recognized that that cost ultimately affects water rates. And we are definitely obligated to make sure that we're looking at all the options. And that is when the interconnection option came up with Dedham Westwood, and then realizing that they were getting water from MWRA, MWRA got brought into the mix. But it is absolutely sincere that we are looking, the goal here is to be able to provide the town with high quality water. And unfortunately, the water from that Francis Street well field is not high quality. The only reason it is not affecting many customers now is because we just use it a little bit each day to keep the well field active. I can tell you that we flushed the water mains about 3 weeks ago in the system, and around that well field, we can see that we are accumulating manganese in those water mains. So we still have a continuing problem with manganese, and we test the water from that well field. We know we still have a problem there. Um, so I know there's been reference to business perspective. Our perspective here is we need to provide people with high quality water. And that's what the goal is here at the most reasonable price that it can be supplied. Today was the first day I heard about this Ponzi site, and let's come up with another name because that doesn't sound.
I know, it sounds horrible.
I'm not sure I want to be saying that.
Option 3, how about that?
Yeah, exactly. And now definitely in this discussion tonight is the first I'm hearing that it was actually given to the town with the intent for it to be looked at as a water supply. That's important because sometimes people, donate property and that's not the intent, and that can get in the way.
No, it was specifically to supply water. That was right in the gift to the town or grant to the town, whatever the right word is. So, again, I hope it works. I hope it's the lowest cost solution with a very little infrastructure and interruption, and that would allow the ratepayers to have the lowest possible water rates in this situation. So, if you guys put that on the list, I'd be grateful because we don't know. You could come back and say, nope, there's all kinds of nasty chemicals in that water and we can't use it. There's only one way to find out.
Agreed.
I mean, we also can't guarantee, and I think we even said this in the first meeting, that this gets passed at town meeting, which is why I understand that, your charter is to provide the best quality water. We just have to, again, I know I sound like a broken record. We just need to demonstrate to the town that we have done our diligence, that we vetted options, and these are the things we looked at. These are the pros and cons of them. And so these are the options on the table for you, town of Dover. And these are the costs associated with all of them.
Yeah, completely understood. And the residents of town, they deserve that level of effort to see that all options were looked at. So
Right,
we're
and it's
definitely aligned on
even
that.
trickier for us because if you supplied the entire town with water, then the cost gets spread across the entire town, right? But it's just 1/3 of the town or the 600 homes that you supply water to, that's who's gonna bear the brunt of this cost. But then there are going to be other people coming to town meeting who are going to be concerned about the unintended consequences of potentially connecting to the MWRA. So this is not going to be easy for the town because you have two distinct groups that you're trying to appease. So we really need to make sure that we've dotted every I, crossed every T, looked at every option. I mean, maybe there's somebody else with a large parcel of land that after they listen to this, or they say, well, you can try my land for a well field as well. Who knows?
I think, Robin, the good news in this is, and actually, let me flip forward here. In terms of
I had a little gripe. I couldn't read the slide, even if I made it bigger. There's fuzzy.
Yeah, I know. It's part of the artifact of squeezing it onto a PowerPoint and all the steps in there. But I think to everybody's point, and Anne can hit on this a little bit more, this process does require, because the process is designed to invite public scrutiny. And it is designed to vet all these possible options. It is designed to move slowly, right? And when we talk about sort of town meeting is not soon. in the context of this, right? So there's all of this
You could have
process.
3 different selectmen at that point that you have to re-educate.
I don't know. I'm not
They
sure.
may be better than us. Who knows?
I don't see you guys going anywhere. It's true. So yeah, Anne, I don't know. Do you want to hit any highlights on this schedule since it's not that?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, there's multiple, I know this is hard to read, and I always, I joke about this one. It's really just to illustrate how many different steps there are, how long it takes to get through all of them. Many of these are like set time frames for public input. So some of them are completely immovable, and some of them are, you can only compress so much. So it takes, at least 2 years to get through it. And we really are just at the very beginning. And all those different times for input, and I talked about this a little bit on the previous slide, it's not just public input, it's all these different state groups that provide input, Fish and Wildlife, like all different types, DEP, they all have their scrutiny and their environmental scrutiny that they look at it to make sure that this is, the best option. So really, at this first step of the filing of the ENF, it's not committing to anything. It's just trying to start the process, and having the opportunity for input, because there's a lot of steps and a lot of times that somebody else could put something in there and say, we need more information on this before you can move forward.
And then I think, just so we're clear, just in terms of what's actually in this ENF, kind of what we're hoping to try to get through tonight in terms of getting an approval so that we can just file this notification form. I don't know if Anne, if you can just talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all the different, kind of various potential environmental impacts, and whether or not you meet the threshold to need to do more with it. Are there wetlands on the site? Is there, historical property, anything like that? And so it's just kind of going through the checklist and saying yes, no, to know what you may need to focus on more in the environmental impact report. So, and it generally talks about the project, why we're potentially doing this, and then that gives MIPA the basis of a scope that they will provide for the environmental impact report. So at this phase, we're looking to submit by June 2nd, and then it'll be published on June 11th in the MIPA's Environmental Monitor. And then it opens it up to a comment period, which closes on July 1st. And then the decision would come out by July 11th, which would include that scope for the environmental impact report. And we're looking at a filing date in October for that environmental impact report. And then going through the comment period with an environmental impact report, that draft environmental impact report, they come back with a list of things that need a little more information on. And that's the final environmental impact report, which just addresses those questions. And we'll be looking for a filing date in May of next year for that final step in the MIPA process, which again is only step one before the WRC Innovation Transfer Act process and before the MWA admission process.
Yeah, and then I just think, lastly, we were kind of summarizing up. So I think you hit most of this.
Yeah. Yeah, and so talked a bit about the thresholds and other groups, agencies that may need to weigh in on it. And we talk a little bit about, the term of proponent. We talked about before, MWA does, in their enabling legislation, it has to be a body politic, a municipality to be the proponent. For consistency, in the MIPA process, it's not always a municipality filing, but really for consistency, that's what we're looking for here, is starting the process with Dover as a signatory, along with Aquarian. So, and yeah, closing out with the bullet just is really the preliminary step, and it does not commit the town to continuing with the process at any point.
But I think to everybody's point, right? We want to options are everybody's best friend at this point. We want to keep this option open, while we've got the other solution, and then the other land piece. I'm going to avoid the Ponzi name, but yeah.
Option 3.
Option 3. Yeah.
So Mike, have we had legal counsel take a look at this agreement and
Yep.
confirm that signing this doesn't obligate the town in any shape or form? Rather, it just allows us to keep option 1 alive? See,
Yeah,
I'm
so-
going with the options now.
Yeah, so we confirm with council, this is just the standard form, it's a state form. She had no concern signing it. I will perhaps ask you, if you choose to support this, I'll ask your vote just to authorize me to sign it, contingent on town council verifying it is not binding.
All right, so there's been a lot of conversation here. It's late. So my question to Cam and Dave is, do you want to have more discussion on this? Do you feel as though at this point you're comfortable voting on it? There is the deadline of June 2nd, but we could quite easily just set up a meeting for next week just to deal with this particular issue.
My feeling is
Yeah.
that if we aren't obligating ourselves at all to do anything, it might be just simpler for us to approve this now and then consider what the alternatives might be.
So I feel the same way as you. I just think it's keeping option 1 open, which
Mhm.
when we go to town meeting, we have to present all the options to the town.
Right.
Because the
Right.
town has to vote on any and all options that are available. And maybe even by the time you get through this process, there's an option 4. That's the best option. I mean, who knows?
Mhm.
But I clearly this needs to be addressed. This is option 1. But and not because it's the best option in my mind. It's just one of the 3 options that we have on the table right now.
Right.
Agreed. I don't need to discuss it anymore, Robin, but
Okay.
I
All right. So then I'm going to move to approve and authorize the town administrator to submit the environmental notification form to Mass Environmental Party Act officer as presented. However, such form will not be executed until such time that town administrator has confirmed with legal counsel that signing this form is not binding to the town.
Second.
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
no, Dave Haviland.
I, Cam Hudson.
Okay. Well, thank
Thank
you.
you.
And I think what we ask here is because we do want option 3 to be a viable option.
Mhm.
So how do we make sure that we begin to explore that option? Will somebody from Aquarian, should we reach out to Aquarian?
Yeah, I think John just texted me. He lost power at his house,
Okay.
and so he got booted off of the off of the meeting, unfortunately. But we will we'll circle up tomorrow and have a conversation about that. And yeah, I think either John or myself will circle back with the town and let's figure out how to absolutely get option 3
On the
vetted
table.
as quickly as possible and come back to you with, because I think where we're headed on this is we're going to be sort of locked at the hip solving this problem together.
Right, and to be quite honest, I wish we can find option 4 and 5 as well.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to make sure
Yeah.
we're not stuck on option 1, because I'll tell you right now, option 1 is gonna be really difficult to pass in this town.
Gotcha.
But I believe, unfortunately, you have to explore it.
Right.
I mean, you have to explore every option that's out there.
All right. Well, I think we should probably let you guys get on with the rest of your meeting at this
Oh
point.
no, we would love to be here till midnight.
Thank you again, everybody, and we'll be in touch very soon.
All right,
Great.
thanks.
Have a great
Thank
night.
you. Have a good Thank night.
All right, I'm moving, not fast, but moving along.
Along, yes, to agenda number 2, packet
Yes,
number 2.
exactly.
Right, which I somehow lost. Oh, here it is. It's on my other screen. That's the problem. All right. So now we're on item 1.6. This should be quick. So this is a proclamation of National Public Works Day.
Yeah, so just briefly, Kevin McCabe is on vacation this week. Bob Tosi was here earlier to fill in. He texted me he got called out for downed trees with the weather, so he had to hop off the call. So
Well, I thought he was alleging a power loss as well.
no.
No, his house is flooded. So
I guess I haven't been out recently, but I guess it's bad. Trees are coming down. So, but yeah, just very briefly, for the public's benefit, National Public Works Week has been celebrated this week. I think it's the 3rd week in May since I believe 1960. This year's theme for Public Works Week is people, purpose, and presence. And I'll just read this. It highlights 3 cornerstone ideals that motivate public works professionals to serve in their communities every day. Meeting the needs of people is what gives public works its sense of purpose. Many times, public work professionals will never meet those whose lives have been impacted, because when things are going right, no one knows that public works is there. Yet, with or without fanfare, public works is ever present, working in the background to advance quality of life for all. So certainly I know the faces on this call are very aware of that. Sometimes the public isn't. I think in all government that's true. If things are going well, no one really thinks about it. That's just the nature of the beast. But I just think it's nice to take this moment each year to thank all the public works employees for the work they do.
I couldn't agree more. I know they hear the most from us when something goes wrong, so thank you to everyone.
yes.
See, we're guilty of that too.
We all are. That's true.
Right.
So I say you move it.
Okay, so I move to declare May 18th through the 24th. The week's almost over. National Public Works Week in Dover, Massachusetts.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
Hi, Cam Hudson.
Excellent. Moving to 1.7, a decision and a vote regarding the Snows Hill Fire Tower. This is the gift that never stops giving.
Yeah, I was going to say this might be very familiar to you in that this very same permit and very same communications quote or company was before you a little while ago for the police department. And for the very same reasons, to improve communication in the town, Department of Public Works pursued the same permitting, sought approval from DCR, received it. This is the same contractor who did the police department. They're on the state bid list. And so there are two things before you to approve the permit and to approve the quote for the purchase of the equipment needed to put place on the fire tower.
Which has all been approved and in our budget.
Correct.
So if there are no questions, are there any questions, comments, discussion?
I
All
have
right.
one after the vote.
Okay. I move to approve the high ground permit from the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation for use of the Snow Hill Fire Tower. Can I do them both at once, or do we have to vote them separately?
If you could do them separate, just in case, I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Second,
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
I, Dave Haviland.
Hi, Cam Hudson.
Then I move to approve Cybercom Inc.'s $34,610.30 quote for the purchase of fire tower equipment.
Second,
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
I, Dave Haviland.
Hi, Cam Hudson.
Okay, Dave, you
my
have 2
comment was a quick
minutes.
one. When I was in with Mike sometime in the past week, someone stopped by and said that there's a lot of garbage and trash up there. And if you actually read these leases, we're required to remove it. So I just want to put that on the do we need to clean that up, or are we okay?
No. Town council's involved in a situation up there. So it's not garbage and trash. They refer to it as it looks that way. It's equipment that's up there from a different vendor. We are working through that in a public session. If you're okay, I'll just leave it at that.
Perfect. That's all I need.
Okay, thanks.
So it's not litter. I was envisioning pieces of paper, food.
No. I meant like
tires.
tires and discarded machinery and that stuff. So anyway, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
All right. So moving along to item 1.8, which is near and dear to my heart. And I will let Chris Costello, who actually found this solution, give us an overview of what we're asking for.
All right, great. Yeah, I'll try to be as quick as possible. So back with another proposal for the board to consider tonight. This one is regarding 5-year capital improvement plan in collaboration with the UMass Boston Center, Collins Center for Public Management. Just for a little context, just describe the conditions that led us here, and then afterwards I'll provide a brief overview of the plan, a few specifics on what this will do for us. But the proposal really is being developed and brought forward in response to the significant number of capital requests we expect over the next 5 years. Due to several factors, primarily aging infrastructure and assets, we anticipate and are already experiencing a substantial amount of requests, and total dollar value of those requests far exceeding what is considered to be average for the town of Dover, as I understand. So as I said, we began experiencing this through the recent approval of the FY26 capital budget process. And throughout this approval process, several kind of questions arose about how the town could financially manage all these requests over the next 5 years. And honestly, with more questions than answers, we identified the Collins Center to, as a partner to help us kind of reshape our capital planning process and funding mechanisms with the aim to create a more effective and fiscally responsible approach to managing our capital assets and infrastructure. So with this agreement, if approved, the town and the Collins Center will begin collaborating in preparation for the FY27 capital budget and subsequent years. But this partnership will result in 2 specific deliverables: a new master capital projects and funding spreadsheet or model, along with a comprehensive capital improvement plan for the next 5 years. To achieve these goals, the Collins Center and town staff will redesign and administer our new project request forms that will feed into the model. And we'll look at the detailed information about each proposal, such as the purpose, the timing, cost, justification, funding sources, and even maybe some accompanying photographs so we can all get a look and feel of some of the infrastructure that we're dealing with out there. Additionally, we'll gather data on projects that go beyond the next 5 years to try to get a better understanding of our long-term capital outlook. And the second component is the development of a capital investment strategy. So the Collins Center will work with town officials, staff, our financial advisors, and bond counsel to review our current and future budget and debt projections, history of new growth, stabilization fund balances, our free cash, and really any other funding sources that are available, that may be available to invest in the projects over the next 5 years, with the goal of to create a stable funding stream across our funding sources. So that's to say these two kind of process will culminate in a final new 5-year capital improvement plan. So although this might not provide us with the exact right solution, I think it's really gonna provide us with the ability, new insights, and extreme clarity as to the situation we're really in and where we should go from here.
Well, it will definitely give us something to work from.
Mhm.
You know, I think we got ourselves into this position by being very frugal and constantly kicking the can, and we recognize that now. And so it's good to have guidelines, and all of these things are guidelines, and then you have to make a determination as to whether or not something should be replaced within the guideline or if you can extend it. But then also understanding what the impact long term is going to be. So I think out of the three of us, we're all going to be fighting to be on this committee with you.
Yeah. And I should add, just to give a little more detail about the Collins Center, we recently partnered with them on our strategic communications plan, which will be very apparently rolled out in the coming weeks here. They're a great partner, and they know the landscape that we operate in. If we were to join for this plan, I think they're going to be working with 8 other communities that are in all different kinds of situations. So they have a lot of conventional wisdom and knowledge about the trends out there, and they might have some insights on how we can approach our projects differently to support our goals. So I'm excited to just really have potentially have a lot of extra capacity to help us really break down our projects that we have lined up.
Chris, I only have one quick question. The model that is going to be delivered, is it something that we can then update and perpetuate as new projects come forward? So is it a model that can be, is it one and done, or do we get to extend its life?
Great question. It's something I totally forgot to mention at the end of my spiel, but yeah, it's our asset after, it's our tool. And the insights that we learn about redesigning the process, that's the model for us going forward. So it's our asset, it's our tool, and we'll definitely be using it for future beyond 5 years.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
All right, so with that, I'm going to move to approve the professional service agreement between the town of Dover and the University of Massachusetts Collins Center related to a 5-year capital improvement plan. I would add the word process, but
with or without, I'll second it.
All right, all in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Aye, Dave Haviland.
Aye, Cam Hudson.
All right, and we're going to have to duke it out to be on this committee with Chris.
Hey, that's thumb wrestling.
Yeah. So then item 1.9, we're going to pull and have a special meeting for that, right, Mike?
Yeah, so 9 and 10. So
Okay.
what I'll do is we've reached out to our financial advisor, and we'll work with the board to find an agreeable time to pull that together, hopefully next week. But once we have some potential options, we'll poll you to see what your availability is.
Right. So, Cam, we have some debt coming up that we need to what's the right word?
Refinance?
No, to finance. So we have to issue debt.
Mhm.
And the question came up, what should the term be? What's appropriate? And so we thought it would be better just to have a dedicated meeting with our bond advisors, perhaps even have Joanne, our new treasurer, part of the group, just to see what other towns do, understand what our options are. Certainly this Collins Center, the outcome is going to play into that. So one of the considerations would also be, do we put a temporary bond in place while we await the outcome? So I think I spoke to Mike and Dave spoke to Mike, and we just feel that we should have a dedicated meeting for this rather than try and making a decision tonight.
That makes complete sense to me, Robin.
All right, Mike, I think you're up, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm up next. So before you in your packet, and I know at least Robin and Dave, you've seen this previously before Cam came on board, is a proposal from me to transition the townhouse office hours to a 4-day schedule. Two real reasons for that. So one is to help address ongoing challenges, which we're all well aware with employee recruitment and retention. And also to provide greater flexibility and easier access, particularly for working residents. So the proposal that I've made that's before you is to consider closing the townhouse on Fridays. Under this new schedule, townhouse employees would continue to work the same number of hours each week in a condensed 4-day time frame, but we would open a half hour early each day, and then we'd extend our office hours to 7 p.m. one night a week. So right now we're open 9 to 5 Monday through Thursday, and 9 to 1 on Friday. So we're open the building's open 36 hours. What we would do is take the 4 hours from Friday, open a half hour early each day at 8:30. So that gets 2 of the 4 hours. And then we would add 2 hours on Tuesday. So we'd be open till 7 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock. As you probably are aware, if you've been in the townhouse on Friday, the foot traffic is extremely light. Many offices, in fact, now more public-facing offices than not are closed already on Fridays. So it's the Planning Board, Board of Health, Conservation Commission, assessors, and the building department. So we already have very limited staff in the building. And while we don't have a lot of traffic, it does cause some confusion for people when they come in the building on a Friday. They walk in, and not all offices are open. So we thought that having some more consistent days would help eliminate some of that confusion. And then again, opening earlier and late, we really think would provide some greater flexibility for residents, better service to the community, and for people to have easier access who work during the traditional working hours. How I'm currently proposing this, and happy to answer any questions or open up for discussion, is to ease the transition, kind of do it in a 2-phase trial. The first phase would be over the summer. And my suggestion, and obviously if you feel differently, please let me know, but was to align it with the week school gets out, because it's kind of when summer officially starts here in Dover. So that's the week of June 16th, and running it through the last week of August, which is right before Labor Day. So August 25th, that Monday, that week. And then the second phase would pick up that following first week of September and run through the end of the calendar year. So the first phase, I think realistically, it's going to probably work great over the summer, just because if there's already light foot traffic on Fridays, there's almost no one here on Fridays in the summer. So I don't think that's a fair test of how it works, because I know I feel pretty confident it will work. So that's why the second phase, I'm suggesting doing it in the fall through the end of the calendar year, to really, when people are back in town, and try to understand the impact in residents. If there is a benefit to that late night in the slightly earlier opening, or if the feedback is no, we really feel like you should be open for those 4 hours on Friday.
Right.
I-
I mean,
I
So
love
that
happy to
sounds
questions.
perfect. That sounds
Sorry.
perfectly reasonable to me. Sorry, Mike, for interrupting. Um,
No, thank you.
one question: why did you decide Tuesday evening for the elongated evening and not any other day?
So
And the
great
second one,
question.
okay. Well, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'll answer that if you want. So
Mhm.
we originally thought not Mondays because the majority of holidays fall on Mondays. So we didn't think that was a good night. We also felt, particularly for our office, Thursdays weren't a great night because we meet these days. So, we'd be in a meeting and not available to the public as much. And then it could have been a coin flip, Tuesday or Wednesday, and we went with Tuesday. So there was no particular rhyme or reason of those 2 days, but Monday and Thursday, we did rule out those as options.
Mm-hmm.
To
No,
let
that's fair
Cam
enough.
and Robin know, I went through and came up with every possible reason that people could say no to this. And Mike went through that list like a hot knife through butter and addressed literally every conceivable thing I could come up with. So to me, this really makes sense, and it also is going to have that ancillary benefit that we're all looking for, is attracting and keeping good employees. So
Yeah,
it,
I'm right there with you, Dave. The other comment I made, that probably one of the important elements of this would be to make sure we communicate upfront loudly and clearly what we're planning to do, so that residents don't get surprises in this. I think that's the fundamental issue. I think there's no particular necessity to be open on Fridays, as far as I can see, but we shouldn't be giving residents surprises.
It only works for me because it's the one day I can go sign the forms for Mona. So Mona's gonna have to be at work on Friday.
Oh.
Hey, Mona.
Just to provide just a little, David, I appreciate what you had to say, but I did want to thank you. You had a suggestion which we did follow up on just for the public's benefit, which was to reach out and just check in and get an opinion of the various board and committee chairs. And we did do that. We didn't hear back from everyone, but everyone we did hear back from was supportive of the proposal, and that included chairs of the warrant committee, planning board, zoning board of appeals, board of assessors, board of health, sustainability committee, and cultural council. And then the operating hours of the townhouse are actually within our personnel rules and regulations. So the personnel board would need to weigh in. So we did see them on May 13th. I don't know if that was last week or not. And they voted unanimously to support this proposal and this recommendation to you.
excellent. Thank you for following up, Mike. I even forgot my own suggestion.
Right.
If I may address Cam's note as well. I mean, in terms of public communication, we'll be planning on, if approved, a robust outreach. All channels blast, press release, all associated materials, with frequency leading up to the actual change in date. So hopefully, we'll try to cut down on as many surprises as we can.
Excellent.
And I would definitely advertise that Tuesday nights are open till 7, because I think that will be really helpful to people that work.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I can come on Tuesday nights and sign that. I'll just have to change my schedule. I really like that it's a phased approach, because I completely agree with you. It's going to work over the summer, and then we'll see. And the one thing we know for certain, if it's not working for the town, we'll hear about it.
Yeah.
Right. The only other issue is, what are you going to do with COA in the basement for the summer before they make their move across the street?
Yeah, great question. So COA will with the move to the community center, will stay at 5 days per week. However, we're working through what they'll do while they're in the building temporarily before that move. So it may be they do have programming, so it may be that they are physically here in the office for the programming, but not open to the public. We're still going to work that little transition through with them.
Yeah, it's very
a great
short.
question. Yeah, it should be. We're hoping it's very short. Yes.
It better be.
Yeah, right.
All right, so I'm going to move to approve a 4-day, I almost said a 4-hour, a 4-day schedule for the townhouse offices on a 2-phase trial basis beginning the week of June 16th as presented by the town administrator.
Second,
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
I, Dave Haviland.
I Cam Hudson.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Item 1.12, this is just our summer meeting schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so your predetermined schedule ends with the meeting next week, next Thursday. So you have nothing scheduled right now over the summer. Mona and I went through the calendar. We worked hard to identify any holidays, religious observances, and we think we found a good set of dates. Often in the summer, or I shouldn't say this, I've been told historically the workload slows down over the summer, and
Yeah, we haven't seen
sometimes
that.
only met once a month. I don't buy that, at least since I've been here almost 2 years. But in theory, that option exists. But we did schedule 2 per month, so that if we do need it, they do exist.
Mike, may I make the suggestion that we all study these dates, and then if they don't work, we can get back to you this week?
I can already tell you that I'm in
I
Europe
can too.
June 12th.
And I can't do September the 11th. I'm going to be in Europe that day.
So, but if we all go through and just let Mike know or send him to Mona, and then Mona can aggregate the we can't makes and then come up with alternative dates.
Yep, and we could approve a final version next week. And then if to Robin and Cam's point, if you're not, don't just tell us you're not available that day, because if it's like the week, let us know, because maybe we can move something to a Wednesday. But so just give us the range you're not available, and we can work around it.
The other thing I would say, now that there's 3 of us, we could also, I certainly don't have an objection to having a meeting with just 2 of us, especially just to move along standard stuff. Because there will be times when just we can't do it. So I think to make sure that things are working properly, I'm very comfortable just letting 2 of us have a meeting to ensure that happens.
Okay.
I would second. Yeah, I agree. I mean, if
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So send us dates just to make sure that we not only have one of you at the meeting, in case you both have the same date. That would be a problem. And then we can make this official next week.
Perfect.
All right. And boy, it is raining really hard.
Yeah.
Like,
And the winds are supposed to get up to 75 miles an hour in gusts tonight. So
wow,
we need to be concerned.
Yeah.
maybe our generator will kick in. All right, next, Mike, you're the next item.
Yeah, so I'll just be really brief again, especially since we're
Much
meeting next week.
appreciated.
But we hit. I like to just say we hit on some of these tonight, which I think is great. Chris mentioned the communications plan, which is wrapped up, and he's ready to present that. I forget the date right now, but we're about to kick off our online permitting implementation, so that's coming to fruition, which is exciting. And we, talked about aggregation today. So I, like you, was also disappointed in the time frame, but I felt better understanding that communities just a couple of years ago were taking years.
This is the fast track.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the fast track. So I really don't have much to add beyond that. We hit on water tonight, which was another goal. So a lot of moving pieces with our goals and objectives.
All right. So the next item is just Board of Selectmen updates. And I was looking at the May 29th meeting, and I think it has the potential to be another really long meeting like this one. So maybe we could just look at the agenda, because there are a lot of committees presenting.
Spread it out a bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But Mike, maybe you and I can just try to figure out timing, because I want to make sure that everybody gets time to present. Like the planning board has done a lot of work on the MBTA Communities Act, so I want to give them time. The Sustainability Committee, they've done a lot of work. I think they want to present an expanded sort of mission.
Yep.
So I want to, an open space again, same thing. So I just want to make sure that everybody really has the opportunity to showcase. Just seems like a lot.
It does. No, I don't disagree. And, I think part of it is Mona's worked all year to encourage boards to come and present. I think, unfortunately, through no fault of ours,
Everybody's due May 29th.
right. Everyone's
available
about
on the
the day.
29th.
They're trying to get it in before the summer. So, but I'm happy to talk through what things we might be able to tweak or move.
Right. That's so funny. Then quickly, town updates. So one thing, and I'm gonna pass the buck to you, is it was hard for me to figure out if at the drought management meeting that happened on May 13th, if Dover is still in a drought or not, because it seemed like all of Norfolk County was still in not a drought, but drier than normal. But I
Sure.
couldn't find an interactive map that I once found, and I couldn't pinpoint where Dover is. So if we're no longer in a drought, I'd really like those signs to come down and
So
the
you're
electronic sign to stop flashing.
Yes, so you're stealing a little bit of my
Oh.
town administrator update, but I'll do it now if that's okay. So
Yep.
the drought status was overall evaluated and updated by the state on Tuesday. And unfortunately, although much of the state is no longer in a drought, our region did remain in a level 1 mild drought. So we do
That's what I thought.
need to leave them up. What I'm going to do is share. Can you see the map there?
Yeah.
So it's not very big, but where my mouse is, this right here is Dover.
Yeah, see, I wasn't sure where we were, and I knew.
I only know because Westwood has a little bit of a unique shape, and we're right next to it.
Okay.
So we are right on the edge, but we are still in a level 1 route, which unfortunately, the way
wait about another 15 minutes, Mike, and we'll solve that.
Well, right. So the state is meeting again on June 9th.
Okay.
So again, with this rain and hopefully maybe some more, we may be in a position for that to change the beginning of June.
Maybe the line will move down slightly.
Right. Unfortunately, I think one of the downsides for us is it looks like they vote by region. So, even if some of this border, maybe we are technically okay, they vote this whole region. So we get kind of lumped in, even though our neighbors might not be. But anyway, so I'm glad you brought it up. I had this map ready to show just in case. So unfortunately,
show me Westwood again.
So Westwood is this kind of weird shape right here, and then Dover's right here.
Okay, all right. Now I'll be able to find it with that. I did last month find this interactive map that when you pressed on it, the town name came up, but I couldn't find it this time.
I've never seen it. I'll have to keep my eye out for that.
Yeah, well, I can't find it again, so maybe I dreamed it. So that is my only update.
Well, I unfortunately have a bunch of them. It was a busy week. So let's see. Planning board, obviously their MBTA is their sole focus right now in getting that out. They did have a few discussions on what's coming for this year or next, and that's the master plan and village center. And they're contemplating how do they approach to get to their next step. Um, the warrant committee met last night just to let everyone know they're going to meet on 6/25 to address any end of year transfer requests. So should we then be meeting between 6/25 and 6:30? Because there's got to be some transfer requests. It's inevitable. So that's just something to consider that we're going to have to vote those. 3 to 5 is losing 3 members. Kate, the chair, Rich Forte, and Mark Sorrow. So we're going to have to come up with new people when we reinvigorate that.
So I actually had an individual by the name of Lee Gessmer contact me, and he is very interested. He's a retired attorney, and he's very interested in being part of the committee.
Oh, fantastic. Oh,
Yeah.
there's one.
Right.
I also have a couple of people that I'm trying to have a cup of coffee with to see what their interests are. They've just wanted to volunteer for the town.
Okay.
So,
So should I will introduce you to him via email.
yep. Unless,
Okay.
of course, Cam's going to take 3 to 5.
Well, that's the other thing. I don't know, so I don't want to lose this guy, a
Right.
volunteer. I don't want to lose a volunteer.
Oh, absolutely.
Volunteer
Once you get them on,
coffee
man,
with-
reel
right,
them in.
right.
Right. And so when are we going to agree upon the new split of liaison
next meeting.
assignments? Okay.
Yeah. So in your packet for tonight, we had a list. I think it was in the section of the
It
reorg
was divided
of what
up
we.
between Robin and Dave.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that one.
So what we would ask is if you could all take a look at those assignments. I think for Robin and Dave, is there anything that you may want to give up? And Cam, I think if there's things that are of particular interest to you, so that we can redistribute those. And then our next meeting, we thought you could take those votes and make those assignments.
And the 3 to 5's there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we need to put on here.
Yeah, if you notice
Fire
anything that's
Board of
missing, or
Engineers, the fire chief search.
And
Yep.
and there's going to be the school, the teacher's contract.
Yeah, that's on that page as unassigned. So
The sidewalk committee unassigned.
yeah, exactly.
No, but the teacher's contract is coming up too.
Oh, so that's a new one that needs to get put on.
Right. And the sidewalk committee, is this the Chickering School thing, or do we
Yeah.
have to
Yes.
add that one as well? Okay.
Yes.
So this is just taking a holistic approach. And
Yes.
what we're thinking is the
Right.
chief will be part of it, Kevin will be part of it, some members of the community, Warrant, just look at it holistically once and for
Yeah.
all.
Great idea. Absolutely.
And then hopefully the community center building committee will be going away, but that might be way optimistic on my part. I don't know.
My husband wants to know why we're not planting grass. He said we're missing out on a key growing season, but the grass
Well,
seems to have washed away today.
Interestingly enough, there was a little bit of a discussion at the Sustainability Committee meeting on perhaps doing native planting rather than putting green lawn in.
Well, we did. I did speak with Dick Malcolm this afternoon. That's another update. So the good news is we do have a temporary certificate of occupancy. It is good for 30 days, and then it can be renewed. It's our building now, and I guess the best way to sum it up is to quote, "There is some frustration," end quote, with the architect and Colliers and the process from the building committee. They're wanting to get things wrapped up and they're waiting and waiting. And just heard, I'll get that to you this week, 7 weeks in a row. And it's like, well, when's it coming? And it's going to start having an effect because as the builder, M. O'Connor, demobilizes, then if we want them to finish something, they're going to have to remobilize and hit us for all kinds of time penalties. So there's
Whatever
frustration.
happened to the proposal for the foundation painting?
Um, it has to be clarified because they also put in to have them paint some elements on the roof that are glaring in the sun, and it's the vent for the kitchen, the
What
railing,
sun?
and they're just going to paint it. But instead of 19,500, the first quote came in 3 to 5,000. So much less. So that's still being worked through. One final one for you, Mike, is the fence cannot be installed because of the container on Dover Automotive. I know that Nina wrote a letter. We need the next step because they need to install the fence and they can't because of that container. And also to get clarification from Dover Auto on what kind of trees, what size of trees. We agreed originally to plant 3 trees to replace the ones that were cut down. Then there was talk of going with 2 larger trees. Then there was talk of going to an arborvitae hedge, and the building committee doesn't know what to do. So if Nina
Can't
could
imagine
ask,
why.
I'm sorry?
I said I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
It's quite
So
straightforward.
if Nina could help us clarify those 2 issues, the building committee would be appreciative.
Absolutely. And I can say I know she has been involved as recently as yesterday on those issues, but I will work with her and make sure we get that.
Terrific. Thanks. They just part of this just might be communication, but and I just called Dick today, finally caught up after getting back from France. So okay, those are the important ones. There's others, but those are the important ones.
Okay.
Cam, what do you got? How's your committee assignments going?
He's enjoying the honeymoon period. It will be over.
I haven't really got much to report in the last 4 hours.
Okay, Mike, you're next.
Okay.
One thing that I did notice, one of the things I've been doing as to try and get up to speed is just going to various meetings, as many as possible, just to get a sense of what's going on in the town. But the other thing I've been doing is going through the website to sort of understand how it's currently structured. I did notice a couple of things. And one I thought you guys might be interested in. The town structure chart is on the website, dates back to 2010. It might make sense for us to update that sometime. I'm not exactly sure who would be responsible for it, but I think it probably makes sense for us to take another look at that and get rid of defunct committees and new organizations. DPW, for example, is not listed there, and it might help us get a better sense of the town.
No, that's us, and I agree that certainly should be updated. So we'll keep that on the list and try to get that updated. I think
We'll
that's
try to avoid drama so you guys can actually focus on
Yeah, right.
But we can't guarantee.
We might even create a few of our own.
Exactly.
I only had one other thing that we hadn't touched base on. It was the drought, the committee assignments, and then I know we'll meet next week, but just to give a little advance notice for the community, Dover's Memorial Day ceremony is on Friday, May 30th at 6 p.m. We don't celebrate on the calendar, national calendar observation of Memorial Day. This is actually official day that Memorial Day was originally celebrated, and Dover maintains that tradition. So the ceremony will begin at 6 outside of the townhouse. Then a parade will form, makes a stop at the monument on Dedham Street, goes across into the cemetery, comes back to the townhouse for a concluding ceremony, and then the Legion hosts a townwide cookout for all residents. So just wanted to make sure people were aware of that. And that's all I have.
Last
Right.
year, Mike was the first town administrator to ever attend. They were
Wow.
very honored. The selectmen attend, and we march in the parade, so wear comfortable shoes.
That's right.
Let's hope the nor'easter has passed by then.
Yes.
Oh, it's inside then, and that is, you want nice weather, trust me.
Yeah,
It was
right.
beautiful last year.
Yeah, it was really nice.
And I actually, my son who's living in Australia is coming to visit us next week, and so I've roped him in to join the Memorial Day session. He used to attend it as a Boy Scout, so he was quite enthusiastic at the idea of seeing what it's like from an adult perspective.
That's
awesome.
neat, actually. I like that.
Yeah.
All right, you want to go through the consent agenda?
I do, but I lost my place. Oh, because I'm on agenda 1. No wonder I'm confused here. All right. So the consent agenda consists of the following. Approve agreement between Dover and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, Electric Vehicle Incentive Program, and the expenditure and acceptance of a $7,500 grant to purchase 1 electric vehicle. Approve acceptance and expenditure of Massachusetts Cultural Council fiscal year 25 $5,700 grant to the Dover Cultural Council. Approve Minuteman's Vocational Technical School District's appropriation of excess and deficiency funds. Approve 3 Squares New England's 14th annual bicycle ride for Food Through Dover on Sunday, October 5th, 2025. Approved by Chief Vinci, Mark Galoni, and Kevin McCabe. Approve 2025 special 1-day liquor licenses for May 11th, 15th, 17th, 31, June 1st, 2nd, 6th, 2 on the 6th, 1 on the 7th, 1 on the 8th, 1 on the 9th, 1 on the 10th, 1 on the 13th, 1 on the 14th, 1 on the 20th, 1 on the 21st, and 1 on the 22nd. And then the last 2 on September 5th and 7th. Boy, that's a busy month.
Lots of partying.
Lots of weddings, I think. Approve, or graduation parties. Approve the Board of Selectmen open session meeting minutes for March 21st, 24 and April 4th, 2024.
Robin, if you don't mind, before you vote, I appreciate Cam's reaction to the grant. I just wanted to thank Kevin McCabe. So Kevin, heard very clearly during the capital process that there's a real desire to start to move towards electric vehicles. There was an opportunity with our new full-time engineer that was approved at town meeting Kevin found this opportunity for a grant to purchase a vehicle. They're looking with some available funds that they have in using this grant to purchase a Ford Lightning pickup truck for the engineer as they do their site visits throughout the town. And we thought it's a really great first test case of a vehicle that, again, it's not used for plowing. It's not a take-home vehicle, so it would stay here, charge overnight, and then see how that works and perhaps look to expand the use throughout the town. So I appreciate your reaction. I thought the same thing. So this is great.
Yeah.
And just appreciate Kevin's effort to do that based on the feedback he heard from the capital process.
He is phenomenal at grant writing.
Sorry, go ahead, Dad.
Oh, I was just going to say he is phenomenal at grant writing.
Yeah.
Yes, he is. Yep.
One other aspect of getting a Ford Lightning is that they have the capacity for so-called bidirectional charging. And it might be an interesting proposition for Kevin to set up a connection so that you could plug that in during an emergency at, I don't know which location would be the smartest, maybe for the police station or the fire department or the DPW.
Right here in
Because
my house.
that has enough battery capacity to support a conventional house for about 2 weeks. And so it could make a difference in an emergency.
Oh, that's
That's a
fascinating.
great
That's great.
idea.
That's
Right.
great.
I also want to commend Minuteman. I was jealous on how large their capital stabilization fund was, and I wanted to commend them for being so proactive using excess and deficiency funds to really think about planning for the future. You know, I hope
envy.
someday we are going to be in the same position where we're going to be building our capital stabilization fund and not running at a deficit. So with that, I'm going to move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Now, one question perhaps before we proceed. I wasn't at those meetings formally. So the Board of Selectmen minutes, can I just approve them as written? I don't need to have actually attended to support them, to approve them? Okay.
Correct. Yeah, great question. It gets asked a lot. You do not need to recuse yourself. It's not attesting to I was there and these are accurate. It's just simply accepting them. Yep.
Yeah, fair enough.
I asked the same question last year, Cam.
Literally. There's often a debate. I mean, it's been an interminable discussion at Warrant Committee, and we say, "Oh, we think this is right," and just keep moving.
So
I kept my mouth shut.
you gonna vote?
All right. Oh yeah. I, Robin Hunter. Did somebody
Dave
second
Pavlik.
it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I seconded.
Okay.
Hi, Cam Hudson.
All
All
right.
right. So with that, and wow, I'm losing my touch. All right.
This was a tough agenda.
Yeah, you guys, Mona, you're killing me. She's sleeping.
No, I'm sorry, Robin.
This is why I looked at the May 29th agenda and I was just like, I'm not rolling over for this one. I'm gonna say we need to cut it down. So I move that the board enter into executive session under purpose 2 and 3 of Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with the Dover Police Association, and to discuss strategy with respect to Robert W. Riccia versus Dover Zoning Board of Appeals. Further, as chair, I declare that an open meeting discussion may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town. And a roll call vote is required here.
Second, and go ahead.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
Hi, Cam Hudson.
All right. So we're gonna move to executive session without reconvening this open session, right?
Yep. So what we could do is leave this meeting, and then you have a separate calendar invite for a separate Zoom meeting.
All right, and I don't think anybody's still watching this meeting.
I was gonna say, you want to just stay here and
Well, so we're still open to the public, so we do need to leave.
Okay.
All right.
Be surprised at how many Facebook viewers we have. It's kind of shocking.
Thanks.
Okay.
Good
See you
night.
then.
Audible.